Performance level studies performance, from basic actions to composites of acts organized to form what we all know as rituals, or productions, or staged performances, or just any consciously or intuitively organized act whose intent is to present meaning. There will be relations between an action doer, the performers, and a viewer or audience participating in active ways. Intent is key. An action or a series of actions with the objective to create understanding and response. Therefore, there are constructs within a certain community where the performance is produced that allows the understanding of this action determined by culture. Culture shares meanings. Responses are similar. Words, sound, music, visuals, movement combined collectively called text, or signs in semiotics, shape performances meaningful to an audience. Performances mean or make sense to the audience, reader, viewer, or listener. A narrative becomes their story. Music and poetry uplifting collective states, rituals like the Mass being a communal religious experience. Performances produce consequent experiences that affect reactions combining cognitive, emotional, logical, and spiritual responses. All these are understood because the representations that these signs or text mean are shared. The sharing of meanings tells us that the community binds an identity. This is their cultural manifestation. Interrogate a performance produced by that community or their creative expressions in medium words or singly, and you get a definition of the culture. An audience laughs at the same jokes, rules and errors of history they share, laments at moments they consider deplorable, and understands storytelling in the manners they were brought up with. In these narratives are representations of gender, the use of spaces, power relationships, meanings in gestures, concepts of time, values, the metaphysical world, orders that reveal to us the character of the culture. We study performance, or the act of performance, within the context of Philippine cultures. Cultures because these are many and varied. We debunk the claim of a Mindanao culture because our island is made up of over 30 different cultures, each distinct in many ways from the other. Muslim being a misnomer to collectively name the 13 or so communities that have been Islamized. A performance occurs with the slightest action for an intent, but in the context of culture, from a zero expressive state, one acts because one wants an intent fulfilled. In the simplest acts, the Filipino purses lips towards a point to indicate the focus of his objective. He clucks his tongue to indicate disappointment. A Frenchman bloats air in his mouth in moments of thought. A man winking to a lady can mean in various ways, and so is the hand sign where the index finger creates a circle with the thumb. Meanings will be determined by culture in the context of the in-the-moment situation. Perhaps the only time we are not performing is when we are asleep, but then again, this may be contentious, because in our half-conscious state, performance takes place in our dreams, revealing some action or even narrative in progress as we lie asleep. This idle state, Eugenio Barba calls pre-expressivity. To Richard Shatner, Performance is when one behaves in a restored or repeated way, an action already learned but reacted for some purpose. But the performance I examine is that established in structures and institutionalized in communities engaged in the moment. Now, therefore, contemporary. These performances have developed and are nurtured from long-time engagements, traditions as you may, expectations defined, and therefore fulfilling functions in the community. These are veritable reflections of culture. As these operate functionally, their values are organic to the community. Sharing the engagements in these performances therefore depict identity. And as we will see, will not only involve the performer and the means performance is made tangible to the endpoint, the audience. A lot of other components make up the performance environment. Performances function for religion, cognition, and understanding. Aesthetic needs like entertainment and the appreciation of what may be the concept of beauty in a culture. More so, by the communal engagements it fosters, performances as shared expression strengthens the integrity of culture. Performance, integrating various mediums, signify a culture's order, ensuring a sense of balance, reinforcing values, and ensuring a culture's survival. In a performance are mirrors of the community's order and the manners the community copes to counteract disintegration. For instance, Lent isn't complete without the Sinapulo in Pampanga, or the Via Crucis in Guimaras, or the devotion performed in the feast of Jesus Nazareno in Quiapo. The recitation of the Salsila is necessary in a Maranao Kanduri. In Iligan, the fulfillment of the Sinulog, Yawa Yawa, and the Diandi as markers of the fiesta of Arcangel San Miguel is primary. And so is the Diandi transposed to its consumerist platform in a street dance contest. A choreographed field demonstration presentation pervasive all over, necessary to enliven the Iliganan celebration, introduce the community to the San Miguel narratives, and lure the tourist in. The French Academy, where Molière, Racine, and Corneille depended on, propped the hegemony of the monarch under King Louis XIII, institutionalizing what to the French of the 17th century were the marks of their highest aesthetics. The commercial viability of New York City is made more dominant because of its Broadway theater district, and so is the West End of London. These are performances that ensure interest in the spectacles their theaters produce, considering as primary what works for the theater goer with the resources to pay for entertainment in exchange. For us, through our own practice of performance of over 4 decades, we have established the organic characters of performance. Our works sum up the 3 P's. 3 P's of performance: pedagogy, praxis, and production, gathered from expressions in theater, ritual, cultural enactments, and other social events. Evolved as a principle in a process we capture from the Cebuano phrase, hagop sa kasinitian, or embraced by the experience. Performance illustrates the aesthetics involved from the blend of culture and performance. Engagements between performance and audiences describe how performance operates and how practitioners may adapt this into their own practice. These works have shaped a characteristic aesthetics framed by the principles of transcreation and distillation, creative processes that have made a deep impact in Philippine dramaturgy. Our thesis illustrates the aesthetics and process of performance, citing various samples of Philippine performative expressions. Clearly studied and described are the processes of how performance exacts intention from a synthesis of production, audience, meaning-making, response, and the cultural environment performance operates in. Performances embody text and a construct whose meanings make sense to the culture where it emanates from. Now consider the map of our performance environment. The content performance level relies on is built on four main pillars. First, in mapping a performance as illustrated earlier, we understand and appreciate the environment that performance operates in, aesthetics and engagements considering our grasp of our representation of science. Then we have models of performances and how these operate in various contexts, even making use of the singkil as a prime example of how one form migrates into several milieus minus their cultural scaffoldings. By these samples, we construct categories. We note how certain categories cannot be explicit for a lot of Philippine expressions. Even the category using eras of history to box performance in the Philippines may be contentious. It is here where we can now define Philippine theater and understand its formation according to product and process. Finally, the crux of the content is an explanation of how our principles of transcreation and distillation have been the basis of our practice. While the concepts may seem abstract, academic even, these may be put into practical use by theater makers, and the production of performances signifying that the understanding of an audience and the process of that production of performance can be made a lot more effective, thus successful, and may greatly benefit directors and dramaturgs.